I'm Sarah Barkoff, and my WriteMentor book was The Wanderers. So I had started The Wanderers about 3 years before finding WriteMentor. I had gone through, I would say, about 6 or 7 full edits on my own, never with any beta readers. My writing used to be very much a solitary effort, I would say. And The Wanderers was my second book that I had ever written. I had this other book that I had queried I had probably sent it out for about a year. And there was lots of interest in it. That was, my first book. And I would say I came pretty close to getting an agent, but ultimately, like so many stories similar to mine, it didn't pan out. So when I started The Wanderers, I was really gung-ho about it, super excited about this book. I just thought it was going to be the greatest thing ever. And what ended up happening is that in an effort to right all my wrongs from my first book, I just got really overwhelmed. And, I think I was like 70 pages in and I had no idea like where the story was going. And I walked away from it actually for about maybe 2 years. I had a baby in between, and I had a lot of distractions. I couldn't finish it. And when I finally came back to it, I really forced myself just to get out that first draft. But when I finished it, it was a huge mess, and I knew it was. So I probably went through about 6 or 7 full edits before I found WriteMentor. And probably by the 6th or 7th edit, and I would say 3 of those were like full rewrites, I felt like it was in good shape, but ultimately my intuition was telling me that something wasn't clicking. And I kind of knew when I had started sending it out to agents and there was some interest, and some of the feedback I was getting was also reflecting what my suspicions were. And I knew something was wrong, but I just didn't know how to fix it. And I felt like I had gone to the ends of myself, and I didn't know what to do to fix this book. So one night I was on Twitter and heavily involved in kind of like the book community there. I was coming out of my shell a little bit, prior to finding the writing community through WriteMentor. I had just really kept to myself, laid low, and just kind of, I was an observer. So as I let myself kind of like come out of my shell, I applied for WriteMentor, and I found my mentor, Brandy Snow, and she really saved this book, to be honest. Just her insight and her reactions to certain sections of the book, I was able to come up with ways to remedy what the problems were. And, oddly enough, even after having gone through like 6 or 7 edits on my own, it became clear to me that this was going to be another big rewrite. And to be honest, it felt extremely overwhelming for me. That realization was, it was really overwhelming. And at the time, I was moving to Cleveland from New York, and I had taken all this on, and I knew so badly that I wanted to get this book right. I think there was even a point where, the goal had stopped being get the agent, or, get a publisher. And it was just like, I just want to get the book right to make it right within myself, because it was just it was so torturous, because I knew what it could be, and I saw what it could be from the very, very, very beginning. I saw what I wanted it to be. And I think my biggest flaw was kind of like seeing the end product when it was still very much in the beginning stages. So when I finally found Brandy and we started the process, as overwhelming as it was, there was this feeling that it was all coming together. And it was a great feeling, and it really motivated me to just power through it and, leave all of my ego aside, anything that I thought couldn't be cut from the book. I had to just trust her, and I really did. I truly did. And in the end, I would say that the end product is the best version that it could be. So my WriteMentor experience was fantastic. I can't say enough about Brandy Snow. I respect her greatly. As an author, she writes mostly romance. And my book was, I would categorize it as kind of like a psychological thriller, but Brandy really honed in on my strengths. She got it. She just got it. We just clicked. We have this amazing friendship. And like I said, I respect her so much. I respect her opinion so much. And I was able to just trust her completely, trust her notes completely, and just dive into it. And she was there for me, through all of the edits. I would, call her or message her with just just totally stuck in the weeds of dialogue or any little detail. And she was just really good at, she kind of became my life coach, honestly. She was just really good at kind of getting me out of my head and into the character and the whys of why is this character doing this? And, what will lead to this if the character does that? And I just started looking at it from a different perspective than I had been looking at it. And she just really opened up the floodgates to what ended up being a great final product. So after WriteMentor, it was a little bit tricky. This book, The Wanderers, it had already been queried quite a bit. And I was really honest about that when I applied. I think that when I applied for WriteMentor, I had already sent my book out to maybe 80 agents, and it had been seen by a lot of people. It was definitely out there. There was interest even before I did WriteMentor, but ultimately everybody passed. And I was nervous about having had put so much work into something and then putting it out there into the world again. It felt really vulnerable. I felt this is it, and I felt there was so much riding on it. And there kind of was, because this really was the last ditch effort for this book. So after WriteMentor, we had the showcase, and I garnered a little bit of interest, but definitely not, it wasn't overwhelming. And that was okay, because I had sent it out a lot on my own, and it was actually amazing, even after having had put it out there before WriteMentor. There was a lot of interest. I got a lot of requests, and every time that email pinged and I had another request, it was felt so amazing. And I remember just thinking even if nothing comes of this book, this just feels great. Like, it feels like the work paid off, whether nothing ended up happening with it. And I just, I got the experience and I got that confidence back that I was so lacking from my first book. It felt great. And, slowly those requests, I would send them out and send the full manuscript and just wait and check my email 1,000 times. And, in the midst of waiting, I found who ended up being my publisher, Ever19. And I thought, I'm just going to, while I'm waiting for these responses to come in, maybe this is, something that I'd like to explore. And I had never really thought of, an indie publisher. I hadn't thought of it. And, it was always like agent. And that is like as far as my brain went. But, I started after I had made some friends during WriteMentor, and they had published, independent. They had so many great experiences with it. I just started looking into it a little bit on my own. And I think I queried maybe 3 or 4 independent publishers. And I got all requests from these independent publishers. And I ended up with 4 offers from independent publishers. And I ultimately went with Ever19 because I loved their other books. I felt like my book really fit in with, some of the other books that they had published. And, before I accepted the deal, I reached out to some of the other authors, and they had amazing experiences, and it just felt really right. And I loved all their book covers, and, it all kind of came together. And then, slowly but surely, some of those final responses from agents came in, and I just ultimately went with Ever19. And I'm so glad that I did, because just the process of The Wanderers was such a long process, that when it was finally time to get published, the editing process, the book cover, it all just came together, and it felt so good, and it just felt right. And, the book came out, and everybody, got a chance to read it. And, it was the right decision, 100%. So I'm really happy that I ended up going indie. My book, The Wanderers, is a young adult psychological thriller. It follows 17-year-old Sosie Friedman during the course of investigating her mother's suspicious death. Her mother died in a horrible car accident, but no one knows whether it was really an accident or if it was actually suicide. So that's basically how the book starts out. And Sosie is kind of like an emancipated minor, pretty much. Her dad isn't in the picture. She is a high school senior, but basically takes care of herself, fends for herself. And in the midst of grieving her mom, Hurricane Sandy in Long Beach, New York hits. And through that natural disaster, all the truths about her mom start to unfold. And Sosie embarks on a journey with 4 friends, and they are on a quest to discover the truth about her mom. And through the course of the book, we investigate not only her mother's death, but her mental health. And in doing so, we also learn about Sosie's mental health. And then the story takes a turn, and we realize that a lot of the same mental health struggles that her mother went through, Sosie is actually also going through. And I don't think Sosie even knew about it before she embarked on this journey. So through that and through her mother's death, we really come to realize what really happened with her mom, and what is actually happening with Sosie. You have to read it to find out the end. So what I'm working on now, after The Wanderers, I started a middle grade humorous book. And, just like The Wanderers, I started like really gung-ho. And then, like so many writers, the pandemic hit, and all my creative juices just kind of flew out the window. And, I didn't fight it this time. I just let it be. And I would say only just recently I started to reread what I've already written, and I'm getting really excited about it again. So I really hope to finish this book by the summer, start querying it out. I think it's really special. It's semi-autobiographical, so I really want to get it right. And I hope that it turns out the way that I know that it can be, if that makes sense. Advice that I would give other writers, and, in no way do I feel like I feel a little bit of imposter syndrome by even like giving advice. I feel like I need advice. But, the one piece of advice I would give to like any fellow writer would be to kind of like listen, to find people who give you an honest opinion about your writing. And that would not be, all the people who love you. And, the people who are just going to be like so proud of you just for writing and finishing a book. It's the people who are really going to break down the holes in the plot and the problems with the character and the clunky dialogue. And my advice is to be open to it. And the biggest advice, like if I had to just narrow it down to one thing, the biggest thing is to not defend what you've written. Because I know how that is. Like, you've written something and then someone gives you some constructive criticism, and the instinct is, well, they don't understand why I wrote it this way, or they don't understand what's going to happen like next in the book, or this character, or what this character is hiding at this point in the book. So the instinct is kind of like defend it or explain it, is probably like a better way of putting it, like explain it away. And just take it for face value, because that's how a reader is going to read your book. They're not going to know the end of the book. They're not going to, and until they get to the end of the book, hopefully. So you have to listen to the reactions of the reader for, the beginning, middle, and the end of the book, and not try to explain it away, but really like lean into what they're saying. That's not to say that sometimes, you might get bad advice, but, if you're the type of writer who, has a hard time like hearing this character isn't working, or this character needs to be cut, or this is like a hole in the plot, and, if you're going to just explain it away, you're really just shooting yourself in the foot. And you're also like not giving yourself a chance to really grow. And my other piece of advice is, when you're finally ready to query, don't query too early. I feel like I've done that with both of my books. You get so excited about, you finish this book and, you work hard on it, and you hear kind of the horror stories through Twitter of people who finish a first draft and then they send it out, and you're like, oh, well, I'm not like them. I would never send out a first draft. But, the truth is, even a third draft might not be ready. And I learned that the hard way. So a fourth draft, it might not be ready. So just don't query too early. Don't get it out there and have, the agents have their eyes on it before it can be at its absolute best, because very rarely can you send it to your dream agent and they reject it, and then you rewrite it and then you send it back to them. It's already been on their radar. Maybe they'll, put their eyes on it again. That would be amazing. But more times than not, I suspect that they kind of just, see your name in the email and they're like, oh, well, I already read that, or that was already on my radar. That's not to say that there aren't, amazing agents that may take a look at it again. Because actually with the Wanderers, I did have a couple people take a look at it again. But just try to avoid that altogether, and don't query too early just because you're so excited. Like, make sure it's really ready. Make sure all those plot holes are fixed and everything is as good as it can be. And one more piece of advice is, after you either query an agent or submit to a competition or anything it might be, when you make a submission, don't ever email the agent back or the mentor back and say, oh, actually, I rewrote this section. Can I send you the new one? It just, everything gets confusing. It just kind of looks unprofessional. I've done that too. So, I think that it's better to just, keep it really professional. Like, this is my full manuscript, submit it, and then, what will be done will be done.